only place for everything Viking. 6, 1, 2, Vikings.
Welcome back to 612 Vikings. I am Dustin with your co-host Drew. And guys, it is Vikings Lions week. We are in probably the biggest, or actually it probably is the biggest regular season game of at least Vikings franchise history. It'll be the biggest regular season game of Lions franchise history, all on Sunday Night Football. And we're going to kind of break it down before we get into that amazing game that can't come soon enough. So Drew, how are we looking for the game on Sunday Night Football?
I think things are looking good. The Vikings, I would say, are the healthier team. That's
Oh yeah,
definitely for sure. We'll have Blake Cashman back. That's really big. And Ivan Pace came back against Green Bay, so he'll be out there ready to go. So our defense is pretty much fully there and healthy. So that'll be big for this upcoming playoff run. And then you'll also have T.J. Hawkinson. I think that's the big one that everyone's kind of got their eyes on. This is for his first time playing Detroit since the low blow from Kirby Joseph. So that's the big thing right now. Big returns that are coming back. This time around, we won't have Christian Darrisaw. He played with them last time around. This time it'll be Cam Robinson's debut against the Detroit Lions, and it's definitely a different Detroit Lions team. They don't have Aiden
yeah,
Hutchinson, but they do have Zadarius Smith. So it is his. I believe this is his first time playing Minnesota
yep.
since he left the Vikings too. So, every game against a former team for Zadarius Smith is a revenge game for him, and he'll find the weirdest excuses to find that. But if you want to call it that, it's a revenge game for him. If you want to call it that, so. But yeah, there's a lot of storylines with this, and Dustin, you can kind of break down the other playoff implications if you'd like.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, I mean, it's been said everywhere too, but just as a reminder, the Vikings and the Lions are both fighting for the number one seed for this game. So that's why this is so important. And just as equally as important too is if any team loses, they get the fifth seed. And that's not something that you really want in these playoffs. I mean, you're already in there, but you want that number one seed. And if you get that fifth seed, you're on the road for at least 3 games on the road. Depending on how things shake out, you can probably get a home game out of that, but starting off on the road at least. And yeah, it's just a harder way to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, the Vikings get a home playoff game. You get 2 home playoff games instead of 3 away games. So just kind of looking at it that way, that's why this game is so big. And yeah, it's going to be a really fun game. Bring your guys' popcorn. It,
Mhm.
you know, whether you want to sit at home to watch this, if you want to go to like a Buffalo Wild Wings or a bar, wherever you go, it's going to be a fun game regardless.
Yeah, and both teams need this first round bye. Detroit really needs it to kind of get their guys back and healthy again. Like I said earlier, they are very much depleted with injuries, but
Yep.
very underrated. No one seems to be kind of talking about this. I kind of broke it down on why the Vikings really need this one seed. So their home road splits, the Vikings have scored uh, the total points on offense. They've scored 252 points total, which is good for 28 points per game on offense. And at home, they're allowing 18.3 points per game. On the road, they're allowing 19.4 points per game. So it's definitely a little bit of an increase. But on
Mhm.
offense, on the road, you see a dramatic drop where they go from 28 to 24.4. So things are a lot closer. So when people kind of are saying, "Oh, the Vikings only have these one score games," most of those are on the road. So that's something that you have to take into account for as well. When you have that 10-point differential per game, that's a 2 possession win on average for the Vikings at home versus being on the road where it's a 5 point game. It could be a game winning drive opportunity. They're still in the plus and they're still in the green in that category, but
Mhm.
the differential total goes from 80 plus 87 at home, and on the road it significantly drops to plus 35. So it's something that both teams are desperately looking for, and something they both desperately need going into this postseason run. And I believe I saw on ESPN, I think about 50% of the number one seeds I'm sorry, Super Bowls have had the number one seed, I believe, about 50% of the time or 2/3 of the time. So That's something that's another reason too.
Good
So
news.
if you think this is the year for the Vikings, this is a big game. This is basically an early playoff game. So it's definitely one the whole world's going to be watching. And but yeah, that's kind of the storylines for the Vikings going into this one with Detroit and why they kind of need this number one seed and why the 5 seed is kind of the on the wrong side of playoffs on playoff
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, exactly that. And I know you kind of brought up the injuries too for these teams, and the Vikings have been relatively healthy this whole year. They've lost pretty much one starter for the whole season. That was Christian Darrisaw on offense. Now, that is a pretty big deal, no pun intended, but you replaced with Cam Robinson, not as good as a Christian Darrisaw, but can fill a spot, that blindside tackle. You don't have to reshift the offensive line or anything. But on that defensive side for the Lions, Alex Anzalone may or may not play in this game. It's kind of sounding like he won't play, although he's had 2 full days of practice. Dan Campbell's just kind of making it sound like he probably won't play just because, hey, the Lions are already in the playoffs. Get them ready for that. This is a big game. This is kind of a playoff game, but why risk anything now? But at the same time, it's Dan Campbell. I wouldn't be surprised if he lets Anzalone play. I mean, that's a big piece to their defense. Out of what, 16 starters or just players in general that have been placed on IR on that defense. So, with that said, the Vikings are only going into this game missing Pat Jones. Now, that is a big deal in a way because he's a rotational piece, behind Grenard and Van Ginkel. But this also opens up the door for Dallas Turner. He's been getting a little bit more spotlight in these past couple games against the Packers, the Seahawks, that big interception. So maybe we'll see a little bit more Dallas Turner out there on Sunday. Maybe we'll get a sack or two on Jared Goff, and we'll just have to see. So that's kind of like the injury forecast for this game. So it's gonna be a fun game to watch for sure, like I've said before.
Yeah, that's something that's on the Viking side. There's some speculation. I know a lot of Lions fans have been kind of going after Tucker Kraft because he's the one that was pretty vocal about the Kirby Joseph thing, him going after knees, and then he does it himself. But there's a little bit more of a difference with that where the guy Patrick Jones sees Tucker Kraft coming and he's going low. And I don't think Viking. I think just to clear up the air, I think the main issue with this whole Kirby Joseph thing, the main thing is the Viking fans and the Rams fans, I think can kind of attest to this too. But the main issue I think a lot of fans have is not the necessarily the going low part. It's that Kirby Joseph is going low and the guy is not knowing that the guy's going low. So like with the TJ incident, he went low and Hawkinson had no idea he was even there and ended up tearing his ACL. And the same thing with Tyler Higbee. He had no idea he was there and he's going after the plant leg, which is more likely to tear an ACL. So I think that's the main issue that people are having with this whole Kirby Joseph thing. Yes, it's a legal play. However, it's one players have been very adamant about that the league needs to have something changed. They'd much rather have to deal with concussion for 2 weeks versus having to go through 9 months of rehab with an
And it's
ACL.
not something
So
that you can brace for either.
yeah,
It's
you really can, especially when all your momentum's going on one side. Like I said, it is your plan. When you don't see a guy coming and they're trying to clip you from underneath, which is perfectly fine, but the guy has to know, like the guy has to know and somewhat be on the lookout for it. Where Kirby could have gone after the strike zone, which they do teach to go after the chest and go after the ball instead of trying to go low and knock a guy's leg out and tear an ACL. So I think
Mhm.
that's just what the Viking brass and more the Vikings fans and the Rams fans have when they bring up this whole Kirby Joseph thing is instead of going low at the knees and trying to potentially injure a player, go after the ball, which is what you're actually mainly taught to go after, is try to force the incompletion, not to try to clip a guy when they're not looking, especially when they're 260-pound men going at full speed and they're clipping their plant leg. So, and I think that's just something that I've said it for many years. This whole Kirby thing, it's something that needs to be coached out of them, and I do think that they'll get it eventually. But I think that's just the main thing. That's the whole talking point too amongst Viking Lion fans on Twitter and all this other stuff. So, but yeah, I think that's just the main thing too with the whole story with TJ. So, But
like
kind of speaking of, yeah, well, go ahead, Dustin.
yeah, I mean Kirby Joseph is a pretty good player. I mean, he leads the league in what interceptions, I'm pretty sure. So,
Yeah, he
I mean,
currently has 9. Yeah,
yeah, he's a ball hawking safety. It's just the fundamentals of tackling is kind of his, I guess, weakness to him that, not a lot of fans agree with. So it's just, something like that. We're not saying that he's a trash player or whatever, but kind of a trash mindset, but that's neither here or there. So just kind of wanted to add that in there too.
yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's something that can be coached out of him.
Yep.
It's and I believe if I'm not 100% sure, but I think when this whole thing happened, I think he was either a rookie or in his second year. He really hasn't had that incident kind of pop up again, so maybe it is being kind of coached out of him. And I think I know for sure he's well aware of all these allegations.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, when he's saying F Matthew Stafford on his socials, and that's kind of ongoing meme right now when Stafford was caught on the mic saying that he was a dirty player. So
Hmm.
there's all these conspiracies that all that got him out of the Pro Bowl and all this other stuff. But I think there's um, a lot of good players at safety. So there's just some things that Kirby's very good at, and interceptions are can be kind of a fluky stat. So I don't know. Do I think it's a stub? Probably. Yeah, he probably should have been there, but unfortunately he wasn't. So there's really nothing you can do. But he'll probably be like an alternate if the Lions end up not making the Super Bowl. He'll probably end up getting there anyway. So I wouldn't really
When the
be
Lions don't
worried
make the
too.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. So but yeah, kind of. I know you brought this up earlier with the whole the Vikings injury report too, and I kind of want to break down the Lions too. So um, everyone kind of knows on their defensive side of the ball. You've got Malcolm Rodriguez, he's out. Carlton Davis is on IR. Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson, they're out. And I know you brought up Alex Anzalone. He's currently questionable, so he's kind of up in the air. He's got a brace on, so I don't know how effective he'll be. He's not like the most. He's not a Blake Cashman by any means. I think Blake Cashman's far and ahead better than Alex Anzalone, but there's certain things that he's good at. He's good at stopping the run, kind of being at the right place at the right time. He kind of knows how to read the ball very well. It doesn't lead to many like picks or anything like that, but he's just a football guy and he's got that football mindset. So
Mhm.
I think that's kind of why Lion fans kind of like him. It embraces that Dan Campbell mentality. But kind of going further, Emmanuel Mosley is currently out. He'll be out with an illness. You have Khalif Raymond, who's their punt returner. I believe he also got a touchdown in the first time against the Vikings. I think it was like a 30-yard touchdown, like within the
I
red
think
zone
so.
or something. And then Craig Reynolds, their backup running back, is currently hurt. So not only he'll be questionable with the back injury, so we'll kind of see how he plays. But look for maybe Jamar Jefferson to kind of get some touches there. So like we've said, the Lions are super banged up, and I'm honestly just shocked that Detroit's still the favorite and they're still at -2.5. So
Crazy.
if I was a betting man, if I was a betting man,
If
I like the Vikings points on this one, to say the least. And honestly, I do think the Vikings will win at this point in the season right now, as they're fully healthy, they're ready to go, they're riding hot with 9 in a row. Um, and I just see the Vikings coming out. I just can't see a scenario where the Lions go in and sweep them again. I know the whole thing's like won 5 in a row against the Vikings, but 2 of those were against Nick Mullins. So how much stock can we put into that? Uh,
mhm.
so we'll kind of see how this goes. This is potentially be 5 in a row, but we'll see how this thing goes. But I do like the Vikings in this one. If you want to kind of give out your thoughts on this upcoming game, Dustin.
Yeah, and I don't know. We're on a 9 game win streak right now, which is really impressive. Actually, like 9 wins in a row. We haven't had our bye week since week, what was it, 5? That was our bye week.
Week 6, I believe. Yeah, it
Week
was after
6.
London. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, after London. So it's a long win streak right now, and if we can get to 10 wins, we can have another bye week. Not that we necessarily really need it right now because no one's severely injured that needs a super break, but as a team to take a step back to get that break, I think would be amazing. That'd be great for the
Hmm.
team morale, everything included. And you like I said before, you get 2 home playoff games and then the Super Bowl. So can't ask for anything better than that. But as far as the game, like it's going to be a really fun game. Like I've said before, I'm a broken record with that. It's going to be fun. Hopefully it's not too high scoring. But 28-31 type game. I don't know, something like that. Hopefully, we can get like a Will Riker game-winning field goal. I actually see that happening. So I think it'll be close. I really do. The Detroit being favored by 2.5 points. By a field goal, pretty much. Um, I don't know. I really like the Vikings in this. Like, I'm not really trying to be a homer in this. It's just that they got the health on their side. They have, for my money, the better coaching on their side. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, coach of the year. Uh, Sam Darnold's playing out of his mind. You got the best wide receiver duo in the league. Almost a trio with how Jalen Naylor played last week. 80 some yards. TJ Hawkinson is back. You have a really good offensive line. Aaron Jones is playing. And then your defense is still solid. So
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to pick against the Vikings. I mean, in a 9-game win streak, why stop now? So I don't know.
Mhm.
Give me the Vikings in this by. I'll take the point spread in this, and we'll say by 3 points. It'll probably
Yeah.
be a 28-30 type game, 28-31, whatever it is. It'll be up there, but I think it'll be close.
Yeah, and something I want to mention too. I think the last time it was a 31-29 game, I think it was the most points that the defense had given up at that point. Uh,
Hmm.
but it is worth noting too that defenses do travel because of the fact that you are on the road. Your checks on defense, the fans are not going to be screaming their heads off. You can clearly communicate better on defense, which I mean, in turn, the offense can as well. But defense travels very, very well. Offense, it's going to be a challenge, but with that's why I'm saying, like, I think with Detroit's defense being so depleted by injuries, I don't think the checks are as needed as much versus how it was last game where we needed that quiet home environment. I do think that they can go on the road and win this game.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's not forget their only road loss this year was the Rams in the controversial Trey Blake game where it was the no call face mask. So it was a 28-20 game at that point. So it remains to be seen how if they would have drove down and got the touchdown plus the two to even force an overtime. But we were robbed of that from seeing that even possibly happening. So uh,
Hmm.
we'll kind of wait and see how this plays out. But I do think that everything is pointing in the direction of the Vikings. I feel like everything's kind of clicking. I don't know. Just recently, I've been watching a lot of the Netflix docu series, the Curse of the Bambino, kind of like how they got from point A to point B. And all of a sudden, I'm just kind of always thinking like, God, like these cursed teams in like baseball and all these other sports are so similar to the Vikings. Like, and I remember this one certain section in the docu series. Jed Hoyer, who's I believe now with the Cubs, but he was the assistant GM with the Red Sox at that point. He goes, "Oh well, we had a certain thing not go our way. It's like, oh, what's a new way that we can lose?" It just seems like that's the Viking
Yeah.
mentality. Oh, what's a new way we can lose? Or however it is. So he was breaking that down, and he was like, "Wait, they actually overturned it. Things are actually going to go our way." And it was kind of crazy seeing them break down. It was like I just feel like we're like the 16 Cubs. We're like the '04 Red Sox. We have this very successful history, but we just don't have the postseason success to show for it. So
Yep.
and I think that's why it was so brilliant when we did hire Quasi and we brought him on, is because he does come. If you follow other sports, Quasi does come from that Billy Bean DePodesta tree, which uses sabermetrics and analytics to get certain players and all that, because he comes from the Cleveland Browns, who DePodesta, who's Peter Brand on Moneyball, if you don't know. So he's very into analytics, working things, and it's definitely shown with bringing guys like Van Ginkel, the Pro Bowler, Jonathan Grenard, Pro Bowler, Cashman probably could have been a Pro Bowler. All
Hmm.
these different guys he's bringing in. I think Dustin Baker, I think said we have like an 85% roster turnover since Quasi's come on. So he's
Yeah.
really kind of turned this roster around and built it to his vision of what a successful team has looked like. And right now we're looking at we're about to potentially tie for the most wins in a single season. So it's just kind of crazy how certain things in different sports you can kind of bring stuff in and mesh it all together, and things are working out for the best right now in Minnesota. So hopefully we can transfer that over to the postseason and see a lot of more of that postseason success and maybe win the Super Bowl this year. So
Yeah, I mean, one can only hope. Like you said, with our two losses, only one came from our home and one came on the road. So
Hmm.
hopefully it stays that way. We've been pretty much road warriors this whole season. Outside of that Rams game, but it I don't know. It's gonna be a good game. It's gonna be a good
Yeah,
game, Drew.
yeah,
So
definitely excited. It's like your UFC fight. You know, you got all the preliminary fighters. It's like, oh well, we got number 28th or 30th ranked fighter in the world fighting number 28 for some regular Joe
yeah,
Schmo preliminary match, and everyone's just waiting for that main event. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on this game. I would not be shocked if this sets the record for the most viewed Sunday Night Football game in NFL history. So I'm kind of excited to see how many people are going to be viewing this and kind of keeping up with the real app, how many people are viewing that. So it'll definitely be interesting for sure.
yeah. To finish it off as the last regular season game of the regular season, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. And
Yeah.
then playoffs. Like I can't believe it's week 18 already. Like this season, I don't know about you, but this season has just flown by. First couple weeks, it's fun. It's on pace, and then these last 2 months just really have flown by. I don't know why,
Hmm.
but time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Somebody said that, and I'm like, you know what? That couldn't be any more true because we're having fun. We're 14 and 2, playoff bound. Sunday Night Football, Lions in Detroit, all
Yeah.
whites versus all blacks, uniform wise.
Yeah.
Um, and it'll be a fun game. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll
Kind of
see.
crazy. We were sitting here at the beginning of the year saying Vikings are only going to win 7 to 8 games. I think that's what we said in our predictions at the start, and they're
I gotta
about to
update that
potentially. Yeah, we gotta go back and see. But I think I had them at 8 and 9. I don't know what you had them at. I think you had them like 7 to 10, 8 and 9 as well. So
somewhere
the
around
fact that
there.
they
Yeah,
might even double that is insane. So I remember when we went to the preseason game, you're like, oh, well, I think the Vikings are going to surprise us. I don't even think you thought they would be even this remotely good. I think you said, oh, this is going to be a team with a defensive identity more than an offensive identity, and people aren't factoring that in. And they definitely didn't factor that in. And uh, Vikings are at 14 and 2. They're the fourth, I think the fourth total scoring defense right now. It, it's nobody saw this coming. Uh,
no,
yeah, nobody really saw this coming. So I don't even think Vikings fans. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. We had one person saw it coming, and that was Nick Swartzen on the Rich Eisen show. So shout out
pretty much.
to actor Nick Swartzen. He should. I think I saw some too on his on that podcast. He says he bets like 25 grand every single year for the Vikings to win the
Crazy.
Super Bowl. And I believe if I'd have to check the math on this, but I think they opened the season at plus 8,000 to win the Super Bowl. So if that's the case, I think he said he's done it every year for the last, I think, 14 years. So
Mm.
let's check the math on that. So plus 8,000 at plus 25,000, he's looking at $1 million as a payout. So if
How
it
much?
if it's plus 8,000 was the payout for it, he bets $25,000. You get a $2 million payout.
Wow. He better share
So
that all with
I'm
all of
sorry,
us.
$2 million gain, and then plus the 25,000 you put back down on it, so you'd be at 2,025K. So
He's got to
uh,
share that with us. We deserve it.
I know, but he's definitely getting that money back from years past of
Yeah.
the fluke thing. So of the bad years, the 17 years, he's definitely getting that money back. So hopefully the Vikings will look to set history as the second longest odds to go and win a Super Bowl, only behind the greatest show on turf Rams with Kurt Warner in all of sports. So if the
Yeah.
Vikings win the Super Bowl, it'd be the second greatest or second in all four major sports, the second longest odds to go and win a Super Bowl from the preseason betting odds, only behind the
Wow.
99 to 2000 Rams. So
Wow.
you know they say
Well,
history repeats itself. We're looking at it 25 years later. Maybe
let's
you
get it
never know
done.
with these. So yeah, let's get it done, and we'll see how things go. So
Yeah.
we're definitely excited, but we got to start at Detroit. First bump in the road.
1-0.
Yep, 1-0, like you said, like Kevin O'Connell's been saying, 1-0 each week. Got the first bump in the road, get a little break, and have the playoffs go through Minnesota and go from there. So just take it one game at a time and see how things go in the playoffs. Definitely
Before
exciting
we
times.
before we head off on tonight's episode, I do want to say I do want to put out on for the record here. Back in, I think, August it was, I put out a tweet that said, I feel like this is going to be one of those years where, you know, you're going to look back and be like, wow, if you would have told me that the Vikings, and then you fill in the blank, went 5-0 to start the season, went 14-2, up until now, whatever it is, you would have called me crazy. Like, I put that tweet out, and I bring that back up after every time something good happens this year. So I will say I did put that out on the record, out in the universe. So,
Yeah.
it's been good luck ever since that.
Yeah. Oh, and I do want to pull this out too. Something to keep an eye out outside of just Detroit and Minnesota before we go. If Miami does miss the playoffs, there's a lot of steam saying that Calais Campbell will be released from the Dolphins to go and chase a championship. So, if the Miami Dolphins miss the playoffs, so if the Broncos win, which they should against the Chiefs backups, but if the Broncos win, Miami's eliminated, which then means that Calais Campbell would get released to go and join a championship contender. And now it's said it's between Detroit and Minnesota. So this game could also mean who gets Calais Campbell on the roster for a postseason push, because the Lions desperately need it because they don't have Ali McNeil anymore, and the Vikings need defensive tackle depth or three tech depth on the defensive end for the 3-4 look. But that's something to keep an eye out too. So this could be a potential Calais Campbell bowl if Miami misses the playoffs.
Okay, one last thing before we head off. That kind of reminded me too. Taki Taimani is still on IR. Is there any? No, I know you're not part of like in the Vikings doctor, whatever world, but like when is he supposed to be back? Like, did he like break a bone or something? And he's not supposed to be back for the rest of the year, or I forgot what happened to him.
Let me see what his injury would be. He says here he had an ankle injury on November 3rd. Got put on IR. He would miss the next 4 regular season games. My guess is, with him being kind of so far on the depth chart, I think they're just going to roll with him being out for the year, especially with the way that Jalen Redmond's
He's
really
playing
kind
good,
of
though.
Yeah, because I think that's when we started to see the Jalen Redmond start to really push on the depth chart. So my guess is he's probably going to be out for the year. They'll go with Tillery, Phillips, Bullard, Redmond, and
Until there's an injury there,
Yeah, and Levi Drake Rodriguez, he's finally getting, when he hasn't been playing all that awful or any you would expect out of a 7th round pick. The moment really hasn't been too bright for him. He's kind of showing up, and he in this short role, he's doing pretty well. So I would say this is probably a thing for him where he'll most likely be out for the year. Unless if they add Calais Campbell, I think that really puts them further back. I think that would say yes for sure. But that is something you can keep an eye out on too. If they do miss out on Calais Campbell, let's say he wants to go to Detroit and try to win as a 5, things could happen. So, but yeah, I think that's something that it could be factored into. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there we have it, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. That is your preview for the Vikings and Lions Sunday Night Football. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one, like I've said before. So, yeah, make sure you guys put in the comments below what your guys' predictions are for this game. What you guys think will happen. If you guys follow me on Twitter too, I'll probably put out a underdog slip too that you guys may or may not, fade, copy or fade, whatever you want to do. So yeah, we'll try to make some money this weekend too off of good old underdog. Obviously the show's also sponsored. Sign up with Underdog using code THATVIKINGSFAN, and you'll get a deposit match up to I think $1,000. So yeah, have fun with that, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Skol Vikes, and we gotta get that number 1 seed, baby.
Yep.
So Skol Vikes.